Hi there, my name. Okay, that was ill. Hi everyone, my name's Olivia, and I run a little blog called Millennial Girl Interrupted, the link to which you can find in the description down below, unless you're on the website, in which case, hi! So today I want to go over 4 common misconceptions or perceptions about mental illness and mental health. The first is that mentally ill people are violent. Over 60% of Americans believe this, and it's just not true. There are 2 types of violence. There is outwardly directed violence and inwardly directed violence, and mentally ill people are far more likely to be... oh heck. And mentally ill people are far more likely to be victims of violence rather than perpetrators of it. Not only are they victims of otherized violence, but they're very likely to be victims of self-harm, which is a form of violence, but it's motivated by different things. Self-harm is usually motivated by one of 3 things. Control, trying to get control over one's emotions and body. Punishment, so punishing oneself for perceived flaws. And a suicidal gesture or suicidality. This is not always the case. Self-harm is not always tied to suicidality, but it can be. Whereas outwardly directed violence is more often motivated by anger, revenge, hatred, that kind of thing. So I'm describing 2 different kinds of people with 2 different kinds of motivations. Mentally ill people are not more likely to be violent. Myth number 2. Mentally ill people are smarter. I've seen this one go around Tumblr a fair amount. I'm not exactly sure where it originates beyond the Van Gogh syndrome. If you're not familiar, and this might just be my name for it, but what it is this idea that, you know, there are tortured geniuses out there who are strengthened intellectually and artistically by their mental illness. This is false. There may be an intensity of character that's enhanced by mental illness, but mental illness itself is destructive, dangerous, fatal often, and is not worth any kind of, you know, tortured art that could be created. More importantly though, there is no correlation between intelligence and mental illness, and romanticizing it to the point of trying to say that there is a correlation makes it seem as if you shouldn't treat it because, oh, there's a good element to mental illness. It's the smart people who are mentally ill. It's not cute, it's not quirky, it's not special in any way other than it's a terrible experience mental illness is, and it deserves treatment, medication, therapy, care, and should not be allowed to persist because there are no benefits to it, and that includes intelligence. The third myth really grinds my gears, and it's that white people are the only ones who experience mental illness, or that mental illness is a white people problem. This is based on a few things, one of which is a sort of perversion of the actions and experiences of communities of color, or basically just any non-white community. What's seen as sort of meek and gentle and sympathetic in white communities is demonized in non-white communities and seen as threatening. There's also the factor of like the typical mentally ill person being like the whiny white teenager with pale skin and dark hair, and they're cutting and they're so emo, and all this does is stigmatize non-white communities who are experiencing the exact same mental illness that white communities are. They deserve the exact same degree of sympathy that white communities are getting. And repeat after me, mental illness happens to everyone, regardless of race or socioeconomic background. Okay, number 4 is that mental illness is the result of bad parenting. Now, I'm not going to sit here and try to pretend that bad parenting cannot factor into mental illness. It absolutely can. There are abusive parents, there are neglectful parents. I myself didn't have the greatest upbringing, or an upbringing that was most conducive to mental health. But it's not fair to put mental illness on parents for 2 reasons. First of all, it unfairly burdens the parents with like an insanely high burden for raising their kids, such that they should have to overcome genetic factors in order to raise a mentally healthy child. That's really difficult to do. Mental illness is more hereditary than environmental, not by much, but slightly more. So expecting parents to be able to overcome that, it's kind of expecting superhero parenting. Second of all, what it does is invalidates any other kind of factor that could be going into mental illness, like non-parental abuse or neglect, all genetic and chemical factors, which could be helped by talk therapy and medication. And if you're just focusing on the parenting aspect, you're going to lose out on all of the treatment that's possible for everything else. But I do really want to validate the existence of potential parental neglect and abuse. There are certain mental illnesses that are more likely to be as a result of that. For example, anxiety, depression, OCD, to some extent eating disorder behaviors, they all run in my family on various sides. Those are genetic, but some other things that people may have, such as personality disorders, trauma disorders, CPTSD, PTSD, to some extent eating disorders are sometimes caused by parental trauma and neglect, or at least in part. So yeah, parents, cut yourself a little bit of a break. You're definitely doing the best you can, even if that's not good enough. In some parents it isn't good enough, but you know, parents are doing the best that they can. And kids, get into therapy and take your medication, in addition to analyzing whether or not your parents have played a role in your mental illness. So that's it for the video. I hope you found this informative, and if you did, feel free to check out my website and the link down below. Have a happy and healthful week. Bye!